You're 100% right. Their website, they tried to scrub it in the wake of George Floyd. Too late, though, because we have the screen grabs talking about disrupting the nuclear family. They don't like the family with just the mom and the dad. They think that's somehow wrong. Very Marxist up and down the board. Now, state by state, they're being investigated for fraud. Their tax exempt status is getting pulled. There's a bunch of grifters running it left and right, including, now we know, in Boston, where this BLM leader, her name is Monica Cannon Grant, is now charged with fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud, along with her husband. They're saying that she received over $1 million, in donations, and it was supposed to be spent on people in need, but she took much of it for herself, and so did the husband. And she paid her rent with it, and she went to restaurants with it, and she went on shopping sprees and to nail salons, and was paying herself almost $3,000 a week in quote salary, but lied about that to the feds and said she wasn't taking any salary. And so more and more we see stories like this, Carol. And that's why it's like, okay, the concept of Black Lives Mattering is something that is not controversial and virtually everyone would agree with. The organization BLM has proven to be deeply problematic, criminally, morally, and otherwise.
I agree. And most people are not holding them accountable. And so you can go after this low level person in Boston. I want to know about the $60 million that they raised. Where is that money? How has it been spent? Will any of the top leaders be investigated and held accountable for money that may have been misappropriated? And then I want the corporations that spent their shareholders' profits to make donations, virtue signaling to organizations like Black Lives Matter to stand up and confess that they made a mistake, that they threw their money, towards a cause that was a losing cause, that was divisive, that could absolutely never bring about any type of reconciliation in the country because it's rooted in Marxism, just like critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion. At one time, diversity, equity, and inclusion, was a part of affirmative action. It had some constraints on it because it had to follow the civil rights laws and the Constitution. And now CRT and diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're totally separated from our nation's history of embrace of anti-discrimination. And we know that anti-discrimination and accommodations and protecting individuals, that's the law of the land, not what's taking place today in this country.
You are actually somebody who has a master's in law from Yale. You're somebody who, has been in the academic profession for most of her life. So when people say critical race theory is an obscure law school concept that's not being taught in K through 12, and this is a Republican boogeyman that has been made up to scare white parents into complaining and to pushing back on the school to not allow just actual American history to be taught. That's what we're told by the left. What do you say?
Well, they also saying that, CRT, that's a course that's taught in law schools. Yeah, CRT is a course that's taught at many colleges and universities, but CRT has also infiltrated just about every sector of our society. And what has happened is that people who were steeped in critical race theory and Marxism, they have written children's books. And these children's books foster the idea that America is racist to the core. It's racism in its DNA. All white people are oppressors. All white people are guilty of racism. All minorities are victims. And it's not just the critical race theory that is most certainly being taught in schools, even down to kindergarten, in books. Even Black Lives Matter has a educational curriculum with many different books on topics like restorative justice, gender affirming, where they tell 5-year-olds that they can choose their own sex, queer affirming, and all about, race and victimization. It is in the schools in the teaching materials as well as in the books and videos and cartoons that they have put together.
You know, you have such a different view of all of this than, sort of these young activists that we hear today on college campuses. And it got me to thinking when I was reading up on your writings and just some of your thoughts, what's really behind today's push? What's really behind the young people today leaning into these systemic racism claims and so on? And this was you wrote this, I think it was an op-ed that you submitted on Fox News. And you write, okay, here it is. Mostly, I think I was blessed in one critical way. I was born in America, a true land of opportunity for anyone of any color or background. In this country, where you start your life does not determine where you end up. When I hear young blacks, or anyone for that matter, talk about systemic racism, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. I want to laugh because it's such nonsense. I want to cry because I know it's pushing untold numbers of young blacks into a dead end of self-pity and despair. Instead of seizing the amazing opportunities America offers them, they seize an excuse to explain why they're not succeeding. And Carol, it got me thinking, is it, the young you who had these opportunities and people looking out for her and helping her like move up, get better educated, make more money, get your own house. The country's struggling a bit with that. The young generation today, we have a great job market, but there is sort of a general sense of malaise, I think, among young people for a lot of reasons. Some struggle to make a living wage. Some just feel totally disconnected from one another thanks to technology and the way we live now. And I do wonder if just the way we're living and the general malaise that these kids are feeling and, in any other time frame in American history might have felt it if circumstances were this way, totally distracted, not seeing each other. Forget the COVID pandemic. I'm talking about technology pre that. They've found a new thing to blame it on. You know what I mean? Like now in just addressing the real stuff that's bumming everybody out, they're latching on to identity issues that are but a mirage.
And that statement that you read is part of a PragerU video that was the transcript. And okay. I think that if I had been a young person hearing the messages that we are disseminating so widely today, I don't know if that would have been a Carol Swain success story, because I grew up believing in the American dream. I believed that I lived in the greatest country in the world. I believed in equal opportunity. I knew that I was smart and all I wanted was a chance to prove myself. And there are so many blacks that have been successful even before the affirmative action, and the civil rights movement. Blacks coming out of slavery that became millionaires. And so there are so many Black success stories, and I'm just one of many. And I don't think that, not sure that can happen today unless children have the right parents, because the attitudes they develop and, and what they see and what they're told by authority figures, that's going to impact them greatly. And I believe my reading Booker T. Washington's Up from Slavery as a child and growing up in the state where he was born, I think that impacted my life. If he could come from slavery, certainly, I can come from this poverty. We're sending our children the wrong messages, and we're not just harming Black children. We're harming white children. We're harming everybody.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.